Good morning, everyone. This is amazing today because I'm totally ad-libbing because I have someone else doing the introduction for me. So this is just ace, as they say. Welcome to another JNForever beautiful family morning. Well, we normally have a morning tea, but I don't mind if you're drinking vodka, good on you. We're pretending we're on a beautiful flight, so you can do whatever you wish. Welcome to a beautiful sunny day. Thank you for all being here today. You all know me by now. I'm Jackie Chait. I'm the Legacy Manager for JNF Victoria, and leaving a bequest is a wonderful and everlasting thing to do for generations to come. You all know the rules by now. We're all on mute at the moment. Please do type questions. Today, I think you'll have a lot of questions, as we all do. I've always wanted to meet a captain. I've already told James this is so exciting for me. Even if you get by mistake to go on first class, they put you up the stairs and you still don't see the captain. So this is just amazing. Without further ado, I'm going to hand over to the JNForever co-chair Jack, our co-chair Jack Kagan, who is a personal friend of James, and he's going to be doing the introduction for Captain James Nixon. If you have questions, please type them into the chat box. We will get to them. Captain James is happy to actually answer them during his talk, and also at the end, with pleasure, there will be time for questions. So over to Jack.
Firstly, I just want to make sure that everybody can hear me. Jackie, can you? Yes? Okay. There seems to be a few people on this screen that can't hear at the moment, and I suspect it's something to do with their own computers, because most people can hear. Anyway, be that as it may, James Nixon, the gentleman who you're going to hear today, was an answered pilot before he lost his job at 9/11. After this, there was no work for pilots in Australia, so James went overseas. He was flying airlines in Malta, England, Vietnam, Bahrain, before he settled in Dubai, where he started flying for Emirates. Here he wrote his first book, On Tour, Travels with an Airline Pilot. And I think this is the time that he decided that he liked writing as well as flying. His other books include Sleeping for Pilots and Cabin Crew and Other Insomniacs. He also wrote a very interesting book called The Crash of the MH370, and another one called 23 Tips to Survive a Long Flight. James began flying the A380 in 2008 for Emirates, and at that time they only had 2 A380s. When he retired, they had 93. James was one of the lucky people that flew over the Melbourne Cup circuit in 2010 in an Emirates A380. He moved back. Sorry, I missed a line here. I can't read my own writing. He became a captain of the A380 in 2012 and did his second last refugee flight out of Damascus in July that year, before the airspace was closed. So James has had a very exciting life. James is also a photographer and is in a unique position to capture beautiful photos from his cockpit. James is a good, honest guy and one of the people I'm proud to call my friend. So James' topic today is the world from an A380 flight deck. Over to you, James.
G'day and welcome everybody. And I'm now going to show you about 100 photographs from the flight deck of the A380. Now, the thing about an older population like us is that when we were little kids, we were invited up into the flight deck and we got to see out the front of the airplane. Sadly, after 9/11, the flight deck door was bolted and no kids ever get to sit up the front. And truly, that's how many pilots started. They were inspired as 6-year-olds and decided that's what I wanted to do. I decided to be a pilot when I was 6, and it took a long time, but I finally got there at 26. I started my first flying lessons. So it's very sad that these kids can't experience the view of a flight deck and what you get to see. The reason why we sit up the front of planes is so we can see out. And when you go into a flight deck, you'll remember it looks like a bit of a tunnel and you don't get to see much. But when you're sitting in the control seat, you can see right back to the wings. So it's quite a most amazing place to sit. And I'll try and show you how that looks in some photos right now. If you have any questions as we go through, put them through on the chat, and Jackie or Jack will interrupt me and we'll address them straight away, because a lot of these photos you really want to see. So here we go. If you put me on speaker view, if it's not already, so that you can get rid of everything off your screen except the pictures. This is a photo they took of me just before I retired. And now we're going to go, if we go, I don't know what's happening. Isn't it great how they do this? That's showing you the height of the wheels as you do a walk around the airplane. Before you take off anywhere, the engineer does a walk around one way, and then the captain does a walk around the other way. So you get to look at every rivet, every bolt, everything hanging off the airplane to make sure that nothing is broken. Most important part of the day. It's called a walk around. And in Dubai or any Middle Eastern places in summer, sometimes that's about 60 degrees Celsius under there, and very, very warm as the hot air comes out of the air conditioning system on the airplane. That's a picture of Dubai showing the spectacular creek. And the reason for being for Dubai, it was where the pearlers used to come down from Bahrain and all over the Gulf, and they used to sell their pearls to the East India Company, parking their ships inside that creek. And that's the reason for being for Dubai. Sitting at the holding point, we get to sit there for hours and hours and hours and watch the planes touching down. Sometimes you'll be waiting for an hour to take off on a busy airport like Dubai. And so you get to see the planes close up as they come past, touch down and land right next to you. It's a quite unique perspective. The Intertropical Convergence Zone. Now, there's two air masses, the Northern Hemisphere and the Southern Hemisphere. And what they do is they regulate the heat. I'm trying to work out why this is zipping along. Hang on a second. I want to try and pause these. Anyway, this Intertropical Convergence Zone is where the thunderstorms amass as the two air masses collide around the equator. And of course, they move north and south with the seasons and become the wet season or the monsoon up north, or the hurricane season and tropical cyclone season down south. And every time a pilot takes off out of Melbourne and goes north, we have to go through this, and it's full of thunderstorms. As you'll find, thunderstorms are the most dangerous thing for airliners. We are not allowed to fly through thunderstorms because they generate huge hail and wind changes and can break up an aeroplane. So by law, we have to give thunderstorms a wide berth. And when you see a line of them like this, it's really, really difficult. Hang on, don't know why it's not going anywhere. Pressing lots of buttons here. I'm very good at that. Next. So when you're confronted with a line of thunderstorms, you've got to work your way through. Now, for Australians, it usually happens that the cabin crew get to put all the blinds down in the cabin. And as they put the blinds down in the cabin, the passengers watch movies and they don't get to look out the window and see the lightning, because it's quite terrifying. So it is quite amazing that on these flights, passengers have no idea that we're going through around these thunderstorms as we go over what we call the ITCZ, or the Americans call the RTZZ, and it's the Intertropical Convergence Zone. When the thunderstorms dissipate, see, it does it again now. Don't know why it's doing this. The thunderstorms dissipate to high-level cirrus cloud and low-level stratocumulus cloud. So that's what it looks like after the thunderstorms have finished. This is the island of the Seychelles, a very, very dangerous little airport to try and fly into. I used to fly in there in the Airbus A330, and that's the whole island of Seychelles. There's a beautiful little beach around here called Beauvalon, one of the best beaches in the world, if you ever want to go to the Seychelles. This is just a photo I took from Boracay in the Philippines to show you an active thunderstorm, how high they go, the light shining on it as the sun goes down. Extremely dangerous. There's another one there. And what we're looking at here is that it's over the inversion layer. So we came out of the inversion layer of from Doha and saw that above the clouds. And that's represented on the weather radar in the airplane like that, big orange mark here. And we'll just go back to that. Don't know why we're losing control here. You can't fly through weather radar returns like that. So the air traffic controllers, this is the way we come into Dubai, down and around, and the airport's just here. The air traffic controllers then have a job of getting everybody in and out without going through that radar return or the big thunderstorm. Starting up again. There's an A380 coming the other way, 1,000 feet above us, closing speed 2,000 kilometers an hour. This is how a shamal starts in the desert, the very, very beginning of a windstorm that may last for 2 or 3 days. And it was interesting here in Iraq to look down and see what looks like little ropes of cloud, but it's actually dust just coming off the ground. And it's the very start of a dust storm that will go right down the Arabian Peninsula. Looking down over Basra, the Tigris and Euphrates rivers joining in Basra. Used to fly in there, used to fly into Basra, Baghdad, Erbil, all during the war. This is flaming off of oil wells in Iraq. This is a Saudi invention. In Saudi Arabia, they decided to use artesian wells and make wheat. Got a lot of farmers down from England, and it was very successful for a few years until, of course, they went broke. This is a map showing you the confluence of Saudi, bottom right-hand corner here, Oman, Israel, and Egypt. And that's what it looks like in real life. Hard to believe. That's why pilots aren't really that much interested in, hang on a second. Pressing more buttons here. Pilots don't get really involved in politics because when we look down, we can't see any lines on the map. So that's all those countries combined, the Red Sea, and that's where Moses walked across, just there, from there to there. It's a long way. I just thought I'd show you that. Now, the next one is the Suez Canal. Just recently been jammed up by a big ship, and that's the Gulf of Suez and the little township of Suez at the southern end. And that's the western arm of the Red Sea. Looking down on the pyramids there, pyramids of this Giza Plateau. Interesting, there's a lot of gum trees there because the Australian Defence Forces went there. I don't know, this is going to drive me nuts. Pause, that's better. The Australian Defence Forces went there for the First World War, and they went there to get ready and train before they went to Gallipoli, and they also came back after Gallipoli, and it was the first place in the world they had an Anzac ceremony, was at Cairo. A lot of them, most of the people who went to the First World War were farm boys, and they took lots of seeds, gum tree seeds with them, and they planted lots of gum trees, would you believe, in Cairo, and the each side of the driveway into the Parliament House is now lined with gum trees, lots of gum trees, and there's only one tree on the Giza Plateau up where this big plateau up around here. There's the city of Giza here, or the township of Giza. You go up to this hill, and this whole thing's on a big plateau. There's only one tree there, and it's a great Australian gum tree from about 1916, 17, and 18. We'll show you the amazing Nile River. The Nile River is where all life clings to in Africa. And top of the corner, top left here is, we're going to have to do this for every single shot. This is where I call the first officer to fix things for me. Okay, so there's 22 million people living in Cairo, and the river comes down, and you can just see it because it's this black in between all the lights. That's where the river goes. But in daylight, you see all the greenery in this amazing desert that goes on for thousands of kilometers is clinging to the side of the Nile River. And at nighttime, all the lights. So it's quite spectacular when you're flying back from places like Tunis and Algeria and Spain, Portugal, Malta, to fly over this area at nighttime. Talking about Malta, here's Malta with the city of Valletta here at the bottom corner. tiny little place. After I left Australia, that was the first place I got a job, was for Air Malta in 2003, after 9/11 killed Ansett. We're now looking at thunderstorms. At night time, they're quite spectacular. It takes a lot of photos to get good photos of lightning. But here we have Singapore and all the ships sitting off the Singapore harbour. You can pretty much walk from one to the other. They're so close, all the oil tankers. Huge thunderstorms sitting over just south of Singapore and up the left-hand side at the Straits of Malacca over Indonesia. And these thunderstorms are going up to the tropopause, which is where the temperature stops decreasing and becomes what we call isothermal at minus 56.5 degrees Celsius. And so all the weather in the world happens when the atmosphere is less than minus 56.5. And because the way the Earth is, it's an oblate spheroid, which means it's not really a sphere. It's squashed at the poles and very, very wide at the equator. So at the equator, the atmosphere is about 95,000 feet thick sometimes. So you get these humongous thunderstorms, and as the vertical extent causes lots of hailstones, and of course they're not allowed to go in and have lots of lightning. So we'll be flying up the Straits of Malacca from, this is from Sydney, this flight, going towards Dubai, and we go over Singapore, and then very soon after that we go over Malaysia. This is KL. Thunderstorm still going, and you can see, if you've got good resolution on your screen, that there's a little set of lights here. That's the Emirates A380 from Brisbane. We're following 10 minutes behind them on the same air route, and we'll go all the way to Dubai. We pick them up halfway across Queensland. They've come out of Queensland, we come out of Sydney, and we'll follow them. And it's really good because you just follow them on your radar, and if they have to avoid some weather, so do you. You just follow them. It's hard being the trailblazer. Another thunderstorm that's further up the Straits of Malacca. And then eventually we get up past the end of the Straits of Malacca, and we can see the thunderstorms have dissipated on the left-hand side. And this is exactly the location that MH370 was last spotted on radar at Malaysia, the Malaysian airplane, the 777 that got lost. This is the last known location. If you look down, you'll see that there's lots of lights, lots of fishing boats, and also 12% of the world's sea freight going through the Straits of Malacca every day. So it's quite a sea route that you always, so if a plane was to get lost and crash, it would be very easily found with so many ships at sea. This is just to show you how bored and tired pilots look, because most of our flying is at night time, because passengers like to get to places first thing in the morning. And they open up airports in London, 6:30 in the morning, same in Sydney, 6 o'clock in the morning in London, 6:30 at Sydney sometimes. And so you've all got these pilots flying through the night, and that's really what it looks like. You spend your life looking out the window at nothing, and years of your life looking like this. And when you're trying to land the plane in the morning, of course, the sun's coming up, sun's in your eyes. It feels like you've got sand in your eyes. It's not easy. And it's a very good thing to retire after 31 years. And I only go to sleep when the sun's down, and I wake up when the sun's up. It's just a fantastic thing. And I also do something that you people don't realize. I get to sleep in my own bed. It's just heaven. Anyway, just tell me about that. We also have a very boring life, and most of the time we look out the window at clouds. And so when you get a cloud like this with a dragon spewing fire, you think, well, got to take a photo of that. So we spend a lot of time looking at clouds and singing that song, I've looked at life from both sides now. You get to have other airplanes coming the other way. Used to be a big worry about planes crashing into each other flying along these air routes. But now we have this terrain collision avoidance system, tactical collision avoidance system, which came out of the first Gulf War and is now in all airplanes. And we can see them on a screen, and we can see how high they are and where they are exactly, and if they're going to collide with us. And if there is a chance of collision, the system tells us and starts yelling at us if there's a chance of a collision within 45 seconds. And if there's a chance they'll get within 25 seconds, the machine tells you what to do. One, they're contacting each other all the time, updating 20 times a second, and they will work out who's going to be the slave and the master. One aeroplane will take over and tell the other one what to do, and we avoid each other by going up or down. We've realized with these big planes that weigh so much and have a lot of inertia that if we just try and turn, by the time the turn starts being effective, we've already crashed into each other. But it's very, very easy just to lower the nose or raise the nose and climb at a very high rate without even the passengers knowing it, and put distance between us and the other airplane. So you may remember that over Switzerland, the Swiss controller got it wrong one night, and a DHL plane and a Russian plane full of school kids crashed in Switzerland's airspace. And as a result of that, they modified this software even more. So even if the other guy's doing the wrong thing and wants to try and kill you, if you do what the airplane is told to do, you'll miss them, and they guarantee you'll miss by 200 feet. And when I asked what the guarantee meant, I think they said you'd get a new unit if you crashed. So if you survive the crash and it's caused you to nearly die, then they'll give you a free one. I just thought you'd like that. It's a good idea. This is what we call, you've heard of contrails before, caused by hot air coming out the back of the airplane. Remember, it's minus 56.5 degrees up there, and the hot air coming out of the engines at 1600 degrees Celsius, causes basically steam if there's any moisture in the air. It's like having a kettle in a cold kitchen in midwinter. You turn your kettle on in the morning and steam's pouring out because it's hot steam in a cold environment. And sometimes you have what's called a distrail. This is very rare. It's the opposite of a contrail. It's when you've got icicles in the clouds, like this high layer of cirrus cloud with icicles in it, and the hot gases burn off the icicles, and you get this thing called a distrail. Looks like a zipper, quite spectacular. So now you're going to walk around looking up all the time. Here is a picture from the cockpit. Don't worry, I wasn't landing. I was the first officer in this case. And I had a camera just up on the dashboard taking a photo every few seconds. And this is what it looks like when you get down close to land. Quite often you won't, in bad weather, you won't even see the runway. The whole thing is to see these approach lights. When you get to see the approach lights, you'll know you're lucky you're going to see the runway in advance. And this runway, it's quite hard to understand how big the distances are at airports because there's nothing to give them scale. So these runways, this one here is 4 kilometres long. That's from Station Pier to St Kilda Pier. That's 4 kilometres. And we go charging up 4 kilometres in about 25 seconds before we take off. So you can imagine how fast we'll be going down Beaconsfield Parade. So every time, you see those guys on a Sunday afternoon on motorbikes and Lamborghinis driving up and down Beaconsfield Parade, I sort of look at them and think, mate, you guys have got no idea. We take off at about 250 kilometres an hour, and within a few seconds we're doing 500 and then 700 kilometres an hour. That's good fun. This is the Burmese Hump. Now, this is a bit of a story. The Burmese Hump, you may remember from the Second World War, when we were friends with the Chinese, and we had to supply the Chinese against the Japanese. In 1935, before the war started big time, there was a huge fight going on between Japan and China. And there's a battle which they called the Rape of Nanking, which was the old capital. And pretty much every Chinese person knows all about this, and none of the kids in Japanese schools have ever heard about it. But the Americans and the rest of the world supplied the Chinese with all sorts of weapons and support, and they flew over this thing called the Burmese Hump. So they'd take off from Myanmar, and they'd fly up over Mandalay, and they would head over this geographical mountain range into China. And about I think 10,000 DC-3s were used in this. At some stage, they were doing it every 10 minutes, planes are going over. But these are in the days before pressurization, so they had to fly over these mountains. And of course, you get this what's called a foehn wind effect with the clouds stacking up on one side of the mountain and going going over the top and over the mountain crests, and a lot of planes were destroyed and crews were killed in the Burmese Hump, supplying China during the Second World War. It's pretty rare to see it. You see it when you're flying from Dubai to Shanghai. We all fly on these air routes, and there are 1,000 feet between us and the airplane above and the airplane above that. And in some places on the NAT tracks across the North Atlantic, there's one every 1,000 feet from 29,000 feet to 39,000 feet. So you get lots of planes flying together along these airways. And here's obviously the contrail of the airplane above, Qatari airplane coming the other way, and lucky to get a photo of that at 2,000 kilometers an hour, passing speed. Talking about the Melbourne Cup, this is taken my late brother-in-law in Ivanhoe as I flew the A380 down the Eastern Freeway after holding for about an hour in a cloud in over Mount Dandenong. We're sitting there picking up ice in November. It was quite amazing. And we flew down from Sydney for the day and then over the Melbourne Cup. This is taken by the late photographer Mark Smith from the Herald Sun on the banks of the Maribyrnong. Lovely bloke, but the only thing in focus is one of the seagulls. And then we came over the Melbourne Cup, 200,000 people here that day. It was the 2010, I think it's the 125th anniversary of the Melbourne Cup, the 25th anniversary of my starting to fly at Essendon Airport. My first flight was over Flemington Racecourse, and also the 25th anniversary of Emirates. So as we were flying along over the Melbourne Cup, we had to be there twice, and we had to be there time to the second, which we were. Sadly, they didn't tell us that the event was running behind. So you may remember in 2019, we crashed the national anthem. And so 200,000 people, and there's only probably 50,000 of them dumb ones, and they had their flashes still on their cameras on the bright sunny day, which was amazing for us because as we were going along at 190 knots or 380 kilometers an hour, all these camera flashes were going off and it looked like diamonds sparkling in the afternoon sun. It was the most spectacular sight I've ever seen. And it was a great honor to do that, to fly over the Melbourne Cup. And it was logistically, it was a real worry. We had no idea. No one had ever flown an airplane over a horse race before in the world. And so we had all these vets giving us opinions as what would happen. Air traffic control and CASA made us do 2 complete simulator runs, simulating this in Emirates, 4-hour sim sessions. We had to practice this losing 2 engines of an A380 at 500 feet above the ground, which is where we are here, and not crashing into the crowd, which was quite good fun because the airplane was empty. So we shut off 2 engines and pulled back on the stick and flew up to 6,000 feet and then just dropped it into Melbourne Airport 2 or 3 minutes later. It was quite good fun flying. But every single horse at the racetrack had to be put into a stall and taken away and looked after for the 2 times we did this before the race. So it was quite a spectacular piece of planning by everybody, but they were running behind schedule. Now we're flying over the highest air route in the world. The air routes that we fly over, you have to imagine, firstly, you've got to be about 3,000 feet above the highest terrain if you're in high areas. But you also have to be able to get the airplane depressurized and get the people down safely to 10,000 feet so they can breathe if we have a depressurization. So they put their oxygen masks on and they breathe the oxygen, and you've got 10 minutes to get them down to 10,000 feet. Well, most oxygen generators in airplanes only go for 12 minutes. And that's a reason they do that is because the cost of them. So they've only got an oxygen mask that allow you to go to 12 minutes, and that's not long enough to get down in this area. So all Emirates airplanes have 23-minute oxygen masks, which means that we can fly around above this high terrain and then fly down valleys to get to an emergency destination. So it takes a huge amount of planning. And as we go up over Western Pakistan and east of the Khyber Pass of Afghanistan, on the right-hand side is Mount Rakaposhi. This is Nanga Parbat. Nanga Parbat is the last mountain range in the Himalayas. And Nanga Parbat is on the right-hand side as we go up, just passing Peshawar. We now go up and look ahead, and we're going to go over a mountain called Nanga Parbat, which I think is the 9th highest in the world. And that's this one up here. The air route, as we go across here, is the highest minimum safe altitude in the world of 28,500 feet. So if we're at 35,000 feet, we can only descend to 28,500 feet. Otherwise, we're going to get close to hitting the mountains. So then we have to go down these spectacular valleys. And of course, all this, we normally fly over here at night time or in bad weather. It's very rare that you get a photograph like this. And so we have all these charts that we program the airplane to fly down these valleys if we have an emergency, so that we can get to a place called Kashi, which is off to the left-hand side at the top of the screen, or Hotan, which is to the right. So as we're approaching this, we are working very hard, programming a secondary flight plan. So if anything happens in this 10 or 15 minutes, we can just activate the secondary flight plan and start descending. And as we go over the top of Mount Rakaposhi, if there was any standing on top of it, you would see them, because that's how close we get. And we do that on all flights to northern China, to Beijing, and also to Korea and to Japan, Taiwan as well. And we go right up around the top of the K series. The K series are the 5K mountain ranges, or K mountains. The second highest is K2 in the world, and there's 5 of them in a row, and we go up and around them. Isn't it funny that Siri's decided to start answering questions? In case you've got any questions, Siri can start answering them for you, even though she's meant to be turned off. So these 5K mountains are in the Karakoram ranges. So the Himalayas finish, and this huge mountain range called the Karakoram ranges is 128 mountains in it, and it's including the second highest in the world. And you can see this glacier here, and this pointy one at the very top is K2. And we go up around them, and they all line up, and you get to see them from a different angle. And there they are, K2, 3, 4, and 5. And we fly around them. Most spectacular mountains. And just back on K2, it's the most dangerous mountain for mountaineers, because it's the highest climb for the shortest fall, as they call it. So in other words, it's the most pointy, and it's one that looks like a real mountain, whereas Mount Everest is sort of like a big hump. We're now in the North Atlantic and looking down and seeing some amazing weather systems. It's very rare to get, there's actually 3 on my presentation here. I've got pictures of people in the chat room on the right-hand side. If I can try and minimize that, you'll see that there's these 3 weather systems together. Just imagine what it would be like in a ship at sea underneath this. This is the North Atlantic. And the North Atlantic is very, very special. It's called the NatTrack system, the North Atlantic Track System. And it changes every day based on the wind and the weather conditions. And so we have to get all the American airplanes out of America that are going to land in Europe in the morning. And so at 10 o'clock at night, they all take off and they fly across 5 tracks. In fact, they've just talking about adding a 6th, 5 tracks. And the tracks also have levels from 29,000 to 39,000 feet. And they fire these airplanes along with 10-minute separation. So you can actually go on some weather radar, some flight radar sites and see some amazing photographs of the radar systems showing all these planes flying, like 3,000 a night. And in the afternoon, they leave England and then they fly back through the night to land in America, in the morning in America. It's quite spectacular. Called the NatTrack system. And when you're on it, you get to see up the condensation trails of all these other airplanes. And this was exciting because the A380 goes really, really fast, and it goes faster than the United Airlines 767. So it's nothing more exciting as a pilot than to pass other airplanes. And you just say on the radio, I declare it a race. And of course they look around and see who's competing with them. And then we all try and race each other. So here's the close-up of the condensation trail. And on the right-hand side here, we see these little circles. And these, there's two parts to this condensation trail. There's the hot steam coming out of the engines, and there's also the wake turbulence going from the end of the wingtip as it goes from the bottom of the wingtip to the top of the wingtip. By the time it gets to the top of the wingtip, the planes move forward. So it becomes a little spiral off each wingtip. And this is where you've heard of wake turbulence. This is the dangerous stuff. It's the spinning air off the top of the wingtips. And so for that reason, it's very, very rare to get to see them depicted in condensation like this. And this is over the Nat tracks in the North Atlantic in this particular day. Oh, we nearly caught him. This is the 767 from United Airlines. Love passing them, waving to their passengers, letting them know who's best. We're very competitive people. So this is a picture of a map, and we have a map that we have to plot these Nat tracks on a map. And then as you fly along, even though we've got 3 inertial navigation systems and 2 GPS systems, making it very, very hard to get lost in these aeroplanes, it also makes it pretty dangerous because all aeroplanes are now flying exactly on track. So if you're going to hit somebody, there's a very good chance you'll hit them. Whereas in the old days, you'd probably miss them by a few miles. But now we are going to hit them if we're head to head. We also apply some special procedures called slop, where we put the airplane laterally off track by 1, 2 or 3 miles to make sure that the wake turbulence doesn't fall down in front of the other airplanes. And that's all. The wake turbulence falls down at 500 feet per minute. And so it can become a trouble if another airplane runs into it. So as I'm going along, I always plot the Titanic's location. And so up here is Gander. You've heard about Gander in Newfoundland, where all the planes went to, and they made that fantastic show, Come From Away. That's Gander. That's where all the airplanes ended up in after 9/11 when they closed the airspace. And New York's back down here. So the Titanic, which is down here, got very, very close to New York, which is why it was so shocking for everybody, because they thought they were past all the icebergs. They were way up here, the icebergs. And so to get the icebergs close to New York, that's what made them less cautious, I suppose. And so I'd always program that, and I put it on the navigation page on the screen to show my junior first officers. I always plot the location of the Titanic, and I call it glug, 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 glug. So now we're looking underneath another airplane as we're 1,000 feet below. Quite often we declare it a race. If we're going, leave at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, everyone goes up to Europe and we'd want to be first. And so you'd sneak up behind the other airplanes and try and pass them. This made a big difference when you're going into each country. The person who speaks to air traffic control as they arrive in each country's airspace gets better service, and you can maybe be able to go direct and save some track shortening and make some fuel savings out of it, or you can maybe get the best levels. The higher you go, the more you save fuel. So we're always racing and we're always competing against each other. And here's an aeroplane. We're going to Paris and he's going to London. Great sunsets, moon rises. Now we're coming into London and we're flying. You probably heard all these aeroplanes as we come in during Wimbledon, because Wimbledon's right under the flight path for this runway 27 left. And we go past London, and they've got the Eye and the Houses of Parliament. And of course, we've got Buckingham Palace, and we've got Hyde Park. And up here in the distance, there's 3 lakes, 3 dams. And at the end of the dams, up here is, at the end of runway 27 right, is Windsor Castle. So it's pretty easy to find, just look for the dams. And here we are on final, coming into land, London 27 left. You see the dams in the distance. And this is where the British Airways 777 crash landed short of the runway on 27 left. That's London Heathrow. Then coming back out of London at night time, that's showing the left-hand view as you're coming out of London, heading towards Dubai, of the city of London. Yep.
You asked for a 5-minute...
Beautiful.
Like a bell. Ding, ding.
Ding, ding, ding. Thank you.
Ding, ding, ding.
Call me back in 5 minutes, Jackie. All right. Sydney, Australia. Let's get this moving. Sydney, Australia. Coming into land at Sydney. in the cockpit at Sydney, looking between the two pilots, because there's four pilots, two sets of crews for Emirates A380s. So we're sitting in the jump seat. This is called cloud skimming, where you get to come out of the cloud and sit the windscreen just under the cloud top. So you get to have the cloud racing over the top of the windscreen. It's quite spectacular, 700 kilometers an hour. There's the Matterhorn. That's a very spiky mountain. And here we have in Africa, some volcanoes down in Ethiopia. There's Mount Kenya, more cloud surfing. And here we have Manhattan, JFK. And here's JFK Airport as we're crossing a runway, which is closed for maintenance. Just to show you, this runway 31 left, there's the Empire State Building, and there's the hill at the Heights. And here in the middle of Manhattan Island is a flat area. And that's because when planes have an engine failure, as we take off out of New York, we have to have somewhere where we can go. And so you're never going to get any skyscrapers from the Empire State Building down to the bottom of the island. That's always going to have a no skyscraper zone, so we can crash there if we need to, or go over the top of it. Every airport, every week, they practice putting out fires. Quite exciting if you've never seen it before. And they also take firefighters through smoke-filled aeroplanes. At the end of the runway in New York, this is an ablative aluminium stopping mechanism, because there's water just at the end of the runway. And so if a plane goes into this off the runway, it'll fall in there and not get damaged, so they say. This is on the Hudson River, and this is where Sully parked his A320. There's amazing geography in Iran, showing you why it's on the ring of fire and why they have earthquakes, why they've also got oil. That's what it looks like at 200 feet from the ground, coming into land in bad weather and fog. And that's Ho Chi Minh City, landing in Saigon. Da Nang, Vietnam. There was 110,000 American soldiers living on this airport in the Vietnam War, tiny little airport. They had something like 100 dentists. Here's that's a NOTOC for dangerous goods. And they tell the captain, if you've got dangerous goods and you've got to sign for it, and it says fighting cook needs air. So I've had a chef like that working at the fishing club recently, but I think I meant fighting cocks. They used to transport birds around. Here we are in Mumbai, next to the airport. The slums right next to the airport have 40,000 people living there. They've got 120 schools right next to the airport. They were going to get rid of it, and then they realised half the people who worked in the airport lived there. Coming out of Mumbai, all the slums in these blue polythene tarps. Jack, for the building industry, why would you put tiles on your roof? I just get blue polythene. It's unbelievable stuff. This is a simulator in Emirates to A380 cabin simulator for the cabin crew to jump out of. There's the cabin crew about to jump in the rafts in the swimming pool. We've got a 777 simulator, cabin simulator that moves up and down and catches fire and does things. This is the pilot simulator at Emirates. We've got something like 7 simulators for the A380 there. When the cabin crew cross over from a bus, it's amazing. You've got 26 flight attendants from the A380, so you've got 52 crossing. All their bags are the same colour. Well, that's very hard. They will get lost. This is flying east from over Cyprus at night time, looking at the Venus, Mars and the moon, flying west to east. Another thunderstorm in Africa. That's how it presents on the radar. And that's up close. And when you get really close, you get St. Elmo's fire in the windscreen. That's when you know you're getting too close to thunderstorms. The static discharge scares the life out of brand new first officers. Lenticular cloud going over the top. Very, very, very turbulent. You can't fly in that stuff. This is what fog looks like. This is in Bristol. It looks okay from a distance. When you get down to try and land in it, it's very, very difficult. Over the North Pole, we've got the Northern Lights right outside the window of the airplane. And further south over Hudson Bay, looking up and seeing it from a great distance. Going over the top of the Arctic, and again, showing the mapping that you've done, coming out of Murmansk, out of Russia, right over the top of the North Pole, and then down into Canada, and then into San Francisco and Los Angeles. That's the actual North Pole. When anyone tells you been in the North Pole, that's it. 14,600 feet deep, the Arctic Ocean, and pack ice. When you look towards the sun, it looks like there's gold lines there. The moon, two different displays of the moon, one from Melbourne on the right-hand side and one from the top of the North Pole on the left-hand side. More condensation trails. As the sun hits the horizon, it'll make the condensation trail of the airplane coming towards you look gold for a second. It's quite spectacular. And then you can see the wake turbulence of a 777 as it comes towards us underneath us. And there's a dog in the cloud. Always looks fun trying to find dogs. That's Virga hanging down under a cloud, very turbulent. It's not going to rain that doesn't reach the ground. It evaporates beforehand, but it's significant. I can't even speak now. It's significant of turbulence. There's Bali at night time. And here's fishing boats. These fishing boats have lights on them all around Asia. There's some in India, Indonesia. There's a bit in India, but pretty much you could walk between Taiwan and Japan every night. The Gulf of Tonkin in Vietnam as well. Millions of fishing boats. I tell my friends to eat fish because in 20 years, I don't reckon there's going to be any on the menu. When you're flying around at night, before there's thunderstorms off, they start growing very quickly and can become very dangerous if you hit them. It's all right if the moon's shining. It's pretty scary in the darkness. I'll just finish up for a break. We're coming into Melbourne from the north, landing into the south, and then coming in to land on the other runway over Albert Park. And my place is here, and the station pier and Albert Park itself. You turn around and you're pointing straight towards the city and then turn north to the runway. And you can see the runway is just up here as you come in and land at runway 34 at Melbourne. And that's what the office looks like at night time. I'll just take a break here and see if you'd like to.
Yes, we have
a break and ask any questions.
A break. We have. Well, I am not going to be happy next time the air hostess comes to close the blinds. Now I know why. I'm going to say leave them open. I want to see the storm.
That's right.
Before we go to questions, I just want to welcome Ilana Maisels. I see that our beautiful executive director, Ilana Maisels, is waving. She is the person that allows all this to take place, James. She's our captain.
Thank you very much, Ilana.
Welcome, Ilana. She is our captain. She steers our ship exactly like you do through all the storms. She closes our windows at night. So here we go. There's a very good question here from Michael Oliver. Other than all the fantastic things that people are amazed at, all this and photographs and what you see out the window, Michael Oliver says, do you have any spatial awareness problems at night in the A380? Have you ever had to use ACAS to avoid any near misses? I'm still amazed that even an A380 gets shoved around in poor weather. What was your worst weather problems, Michael Oliver? So we've got time for about 3 questions, and yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah, the ACAS, or we call it TCAS. And the A380 is very exciting because during my time there, the Airbus worked out, well, pilots in the simulator every 6 months, we have to practice that we can handle flying this TCAS maneuver, which is pretty violent. It's most of the training in the sim is trying to make you relaxed and to try and disconnect the autopilot at altitude where the air molecules are this far apart. So it's very, very thin air up there. And so when people take off the autopilot to descend or climb, then quite often they can do damage to people walking around the cabin because, of course, you get no warning of this. It's not like turbulence. It'll be in smooth air and all of a sudden you've got to do this emergency procedure. So Airbus said, well, why can't we just automate that? So on the A380, we have automatic collision avoidance system. So it tells you that it's going to take, while the alarms are going off, it tells you on the screen that if you do nothing, it's armed and ready. If there's any instructions, it will fly them for you, and it flies them beautifully. It doesn't even spill the coffee. It just raises the nose or lowers the nose, and we miss the other airplane. Yes, we've had lots of them go off. Mistakes with air traffic controllers. I had one in top of Italy. We had 3 airplanes going along together, and they told the middle, where I was on the left-hand side, and they told the middle one to turn left, and he meant to tell me. And so, of course, we're going, don't do that, because he's going to, sure enough, the TCAS system worked again there. And so it works a lot when you're close to landing at airports. And so some particular runway approaches, like at Sydney Airport, you get to turn it on standby when you're maneuvering for the runway. Otherwise, they'd never be able to get the planes down. In San Francisco as well. So yes, ACAS is used quite a lot, and you don't really know if the controllers would have picked it up in real life if it wasn't normal. The other thing, that was spatial awareness. Don't have any spatial awareness problems because that's what we're trained to do. And the last part of that question was
what was your worst weather problems?
Well, there's all sorts of turbulence, I think, because with turbulence, you know, the wings are going to fall off. And so, you know, these airplanes can handle much, much more than we think we can. So one day I was flying an A330 down to Accra in Abidjan. No, yeah, where I think it was Accra, or somewhere down there near Nigeria. And we had 9 hours. And of the 9-hour flight, from the time we turned inland from overhead Abu Dhabi, we were in severe turbulence all the way till top of descent. We couldn't take our shoulder straps off. We couldn't write anything. We couldn't drink anything, couldn't eat anything, couldn't get out of the seat belts. None of the crew could get out, no passenger service. You could imagine what the passengers did in their seats because they were there for 8 hours of this. And it was hideous. And the airplane just kept smashing along, like a ship in the sea. And that's probably the worst in terms of turbulence, because it just went on for so long. And of course, your mind starts playing tricks with you and think this airplane can't possibly stay flying with all this turbulence, but of course it does. And but the others are usually coming into land. I had a landing in Hong Kong in a typhoon once. That was exciting for Vietnam Airlines, and also landing in London, would you believe, and also Auckland. Really, really particularly bad weather. But it's very rewarding. It's very exciting. In fact, on the time I went into to Auckland that particular day, I remember telling the brand new first officer, these are the days that you sit up in your seat and you sit forward and you really have to muscle the airplane. You just can't let it fly you around. You've got to take control and chuck it where you want it and not put up with any danger. Flying in snow is exciting, and also in fog. That happens quite a lot.
Amazing. Okay, there was another question here. Do the windows in the cockpit open as shown in the first photo? Yes.
On the Airbus product, until the 787 Boeing, and also the I think the A350 Airbus also now don't have opening windows. They go out through the roof in the aeroplane, but the A380 has windows that you can open, the side windows, and they have escape straps. You would pull out of the roof and you throw them out the window and then slide down the strap, slide down the rope. So yes, those 2 windows open, but new airplanes, they won't be doing that in the future. They're so rarely used. They've decided to put in a escape hatch in the roof, and pilots will probably crawl out of them if they have a disaster in the future.
Amazing. I have one question, just the sleep pattern. So if there are 2 of you in the cockpit, and so do you sleep and one's awake, one sleeps?
Yeah, well, that's why we fly Emirates, because Emirates have two captains and 2 first officers. I'm just going to show you a sneaky photo that I took. And there's another thing. So we would sleep in the crew rest while they were, one crew's flying and the other ones are resting. And then the other crew comes in after half the journey and they fly the other half of the flight, and then the first lot of crew go in. However, in some airlines, they only have 1 captain and they have 1 first officer and they have second officers. Qantas is this airline, Cathay, and Air France. So you're better off going with Emirates because you've got 2 captains and 2 first officers rather than 1 captain, 1 first officer and 2 second officers. There's another type of sleeping called controlled rest, which you can sleep in your seat. And by law, you can only do this for 45 minutes. We've found there's a program called the NASA nap, which NASA worked out from lots of pilots. What's the ideal time you can take a nap for before you go into deep sleep, and it's really hard to wake up quickly from. And it worked out about 25 minutes is the perfect time for the NASA nap. So you have 45 minutes off in your seat. And I've got a photograph I'm going to show you of a first officer who thought he could get away with it for a long time. So can we see sharing my screen? Have a look at this. There we are. Can you see that? So he decided he would sleep all the way back from London to Dubai. So I thought, yeah, you can sleep if you want. I don't mind. I just got all the cabin crew to come in one after the other and take photos of him. And then I took photos as the sun came up.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, funny people.
Excellent. All right. Well, we'll have to, we could listen to this all day, but we have the time constraints. So I'm going to hand over to our co-chair, Bella, to do the vote of thanks to James. That was absolutely superb. Bella, you can unmute yourself, or you're on mute. Are you able to unmute yourself? Otherwise,
done.
There we go.
Okay. James, that was absolutely extraordinary. Thank you for sharing your bird's eye view of the world. You've seen more of the world than anybody ever dream of. And really, during these terrible times of COVID, it gives us that little bit of hope that maybe we will get into a plane one day again with our health passports rather than our visas around the world. And one story really resonated with me. You talked about when you flew over the race course and you were very glad that you didn't hurt anybody. Believe me, so was I, because my husband used to be on the medical team for Victorian race course. So well done you. And
thank you very much.
Thank you for sharing your experiences, your expertise and your knowledge. And I'll look forward to reading one of your books at least. And thanks again on behalf of everybody at JNF.
My pleasure. Thank you very much for having me. I really enjoyed it and hope to see you up in the sky again soon. The good news is that Emirates has just started getting the A380 fleet back together again. They're doing their training in October. All the first officers are getting their jobs back again now. So look out. There's now 113 of those airplanes, and they're going to be flying again as soon as they can down to Melbourne.
That's
James, I've got my health passport and I'm ready to go if you need somebody to test it out.
Me too. Thank you so much, everybody. And I just want to wish everybody a Chag Sameach and a happy, healthy, peaceful, safe new year. And please God, we are all able to fly to Israel next year. Maybe James can take us on a special trip there. And that's all what we hope for. And we all hope that we're out of this lockdown soon and that we're able to see each other face to face and we can go and buy James's books. Thank you all. Next week we won't be having an event because it's Rosh Hashanah. We'll be back the week after. Thanks for joining us and have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.